welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today we're going to be talking about rewriting our patterns around needs and making requests, even tiny requests. And G has some lovely personal examples that we're going to share. Mm-hmm. But before we do that, we will start with a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other in this podcast.
Well, my belly's been feeling funny lately, so I feel like I'm just going to use that as inspiration, which is seeing what kind of touch your belly might be open to. Or holding. I'm actually holding sort of that solar plex area. I find tender sometimes. So the invitation is just to allow your body to receive some touch. For me, it's the belly, but maybe for you, it's some other place. And when your hands land somewhere where it feels comfortable or easeful or even neutral, see if there's a willingness to allow yourself to enjoy that feeling for 1 to 3 more breaths.
This feels like such a nice way to connect with comfort around even chronic pain. I'm thinking right now about menstrual cramps, which I've got, and endometriosis, which I've got. When you can find that one moment of relief from like pushing on a certain spot and taking the time to enjoy that one little moment of comfort in the midst of all the discomfort.
I'm noticing that too, because my belly just really hasn't been feeling well. And I noticed that when I was moving my hands sort of in a circle around my belly, but still thinking like, oh, my belly doesn't feel good. So that's a certain experience. But then when I let my hands land on one spot, and I just focus on that one spot, feeling my hands there, offering comfort, and I allow myself to just follow my breath, then all of a sudden that sensation of discomfort, it shifts. It doesn't grow in the same way, that yucky feeling. Right? So it's nice to play around. Like sometimes moving our hands is going to feel good. Sometimes some stillness and some pressure is going to feel good. Sometimes bringing awareness to touch and breath together will feel good. It might be different. So right now I just notice I shift my hands to a different position and I'm adding a little bit of pressure. And now I'm like bringing awareness with breath and like feeling like belly rise and fall. And when I focus on that sensation, I'm not pulled in and wrapped up in that earlier, yuckier sensation. Right? So if you would ask me before, what's going to help your belly feel better? I've been like, I don't know. Right? And I love when people say, I don't know. Because for me, it's a sign of, well, just try something.
Yeah.
Just try something and your body will let you know whether that feels better or neutral or worse. And then you just adjust from there.
Yeah. I think there's so much little relief that I've just skitter past. You know, I'm doing things to relieve myself, but I'm not being with the moments of relief. This makes a big difference.
It's been really interesting because I think a lot of people who come and work with us, initially, they just want to feel better. They want to feel like completely better. And we get to a point where more of that experience is common. But I think, we also like to ask people like, okay, when we did this practice, this body connection practice, what did you notice? Did you feel a moment of relief? And they're like, oh yeah, I did. And so it's almost like coming into relationship with the experience of relief, like just a momentary relief. What about that? Would that be nice to enjoy? Would that be nice to know that you can create for yourself?
Right. I think that in the past, I was looking for the final relief. Like, oh, I would get relief and it would stay and never change. And really coming to understand how it's these moments that we string together. It's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about what you've been discovering. You mentioned some small requests for support that were a big kind of shift for you instead of white knuckling your way through.
It's funny how it isn't until we've sort of shifted some old patterns that we realize how ingrained, how stuck we were in old patterns that were really built on old unhelpful beliefs. So one of my old unhelpful beliefs is if I'm not dead or dying, I'm fine and I can do it by myself. And if you can't change the outcome or you can't make anything better about this hard situation, then what's the point of involving you anyways? Right?
Mm.
So recently I had to go do a hard thing. I think something that I knew would be emotionally hard. And I was getting on a plane. And before I went and left my house, get on this plane, I thought, I'm going to start a group chat with some of my closest friends. And I don't even know what I'm going to say in this group chat. Maybe the essence of it is really, I'm starting a group chat because I have no idea what I'm going to be walking into. I don't know how I'm going to feel. I'm already feeling some things that I'm okay feeling, but I just want to let somebody know in my life what's going on with me in my world. And that even if you can't change anything for me, you can't make anything better in terms of like fixing the problem, that I thought it would still be nice to know that energetically and emotionally, I have my people who know what's going on in my life and can send emotional, energetic support and who just know what I'm up to. And it felt like a very obvious thing to do at this point in my life. But upon sort of further reflection on it, I had my own little chuckle about it because years ago it would have sounded super stupid to me to do. Like, what's the point of that? What are these people sitting in Vancouver going to do for me while I'm in another province, dealing with stuff that I don't even know how to, or I can't fix for anybody. I would have just thought, why burden you with that? Why tell you what's going on? I might as well just come home. When I come home, sure, I'm happy to tell you what happened and what I experienced. But while I'm there, what do I need you for? Right? I'm sure I'll be fine. So it never really occurred to me the idea of just letting people know what's going on with me. And so I started this group chat. I was proud of myself for starting it. Had nothing really major to say in it besides what I just said and shared right now. And you all wrote messages. Some of you messaged in that chat. Some of you messaged privately. But what was really sweet about that was like, I'm like, this is a good thing. This is a good thing that I did for myself. And it felt like something I did for myself. And I knew that there was no pressure. Like if I never wanted to post anything in that chat, it would have been no big deal. If I wanted to, I also knew I don't have to give context. I don't have to be that clear in what I'm saying. Like I even think I said, I might just dump in here, random, whatever I'm experiencing. And so it was good. It was good practice for me to do something that my old patterning would not have had me do. And even funnier was when one of our friends, I talked to her when I was at the airport. And we were just catching up and I was just letting her know sort of a little bit more detailed what was going on and how I was feeling about things. And I think this is sort of how the conversation went, but she said, I just wanted to acknowledge you, G, like you starting that group chat. That's a huge deal. I know that that's a huge deal for you because I know that that's not in your old programming. So for you to reach out, let us know what's going on, let us know how we could support you. I know that a lot has shifted for you to be able to do that. And so that we had a little celebratory moment, I think, of me acknowledging what a big deal that was for me to shift into that place. And what was really sweet is I think she reminded me what a gift it is as a friend of mine to get to feel like she could be there for me. And so that was really lovely. And another thing we spoke about is, she's a friend who I hold as a dear friend, and also someone who I'm not that connected with day to day. Like, we know there's love for each other there, but our schedules haven't allowed for more connection, or I've been in hermit mode, or whatever it is. And I remember when I was adding everyone to the chat, I contemplated, I'm like, I want this person in the group chat. And also there was a moment of, we haven't really been that connected lately. And sometimes you wonder with people like, are they going to be offended? Are they going to be comfortable with this? Like, we really haven't talked in a while. And now, like, while something hard is happening, putting her in a group chat. But I just knew, I'm like, no, like, she's important to me. I feel her as a source of support in my life. I'm going to put her in. And I just also thought, and I think she's cool with it. I think we have that kind of friendship. So we spoke about that on the phone as well. And she also shared, I feel the same way about our friendship. Like, we don't have to always be in touch, and I'm just here for you and happy I can be here for you when it's needed. So that was a really special moment too. Sometimes I think we overthink some of these things and assume that things need to be more like, if I'm going to now ask for help, then I should have been around in your life more often recently. Sometimes life just doesn't work like that. And so that was a really sweet thing. Really nice moment.
Yeah, that is really sweet. Putting down the shoulds and the worries and seeking to connect.
Mm-hmm.
I think we really like to know things about each other too. I think this is why stories have become popular. We like to have little glimpses into what's happening for people. I'm glad you reached out.
I think another old programming for me to unwind is that I grew up sort of taught to value accomplishments. So but it was also really twisted because I feel like pushed, or I felt like I needed to achieve, but I also was taught to be humble and modest. So you couldn't really even celebrate the achievements. You wouldn't even share those with anyone. But I think it also programmed me of, if I were to share anything with anyone, it should be like things I've accomplished and things that I've done. It never occurred to me to share what's going on with my life. Right. And if I were to share what's going on, it would definitely be, I better share something that's going on that's good and exciting and light and won't kill the mood for people.
Right.
So in this case, to be sharing something with people that isn't super light at all, and also have no real details about it. I really didn't have much to share other than my in the moment experience. And I think I had never believed that my in the moment experience mattered too much to anyone. So that was something I wasn't used to sharing and wasn't used to letting people into that. And, a couple years back, I did learn, like, when things became really devastating, that, like, oh my gosh, I have to share. So that a few extreme times in the last maybe 8 years did lead me to start sharing more. But the program was still like, share when it's dire.
Right.
So this was a nice noticing of like, just share what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I identify with that a lot, feeling like I need to share accomplishments or like useful information, something that has value for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my mom once telling me, I think I phoned her because things had become dire with an ex many years ago. And she was like, oh my God, like we had no idea like all of this was going on. And you only call us when things are like at the end, like at the limit. And so I consciously made a choice at that time to start sharing with her just regular day-to-day things, just keeping loved ones abreast so that they're not like surprised when some giant thing has suddenly happened,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's neat. It's neat to notice when our behaviors are reflecting a new belief, right? Like, I think the new belief that I have is there's value in sharing me, just what's going on with me at any time with the people who care about me. And even to feel energetic and emotional support from people who can't solve my problem is something that's really special.
Yeah. Being with,
allowing others to be with us along the journey.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned tiny asks,
tiny asks. Yes, I had a couple more tiny asks, or like they seem like tiny asks, like because what I asked for was actually not really a big deal, but they were significant asks for me in that I wouldn't have asked for them in the past. I would have just like pushed through and been fine on my own. And I'm fine on my own kind of person. Have had to like sort of deal with a lot of hard things with that old programming of I'm supposed to sort it out by myself. So these things that I recently asked for were things that I would never have asked for before. And I thought it was really neat because I felt in the moment before asking for it, I felt like, oh, this is a moment. This is a choice moment. I can either ask for this thing or like ignore it and just carry on. And I would be fine carrying on. But also I think asking for this thing and potentially receiving it could feel really nice and could add comfort to this moment. And I think that's a new belief I've shifted into is like, I want to allow myself to enjoy and experience comfort. Like I don't want life to just be like, well, I could make it through and it's fine. Like that, I've done decades of that. And what would it be like to allow comfort a seat at the table in my life? So these two things really reminded me of that. And I thought it might be nice to share in case it reminds anyone else to, explore your own relationship with how much comfort you're willing to allow into your life. So, as I mentioned, like flying out of province into a situation where I have no idea what to expect, other than I think a lot of people are going to be really sad. I don't know almost any of these people. And, but I knew I wanted to be there. So to support someone that I care about. And so when we got picked up at the airport, that was all fine. And we were heading to this house where everyone would be at. And I could feel something stirring in me as we were driving into the neighborhood. And I just thought, you know what? I was sort of envisioning what it might be like to walk into this house that I'd never been in with people I don't know who are all going through something difficult. And I just had this feeling of it would feel really nice to feel really rooted and grounded in me first before heading into this home. And I had just gotten off a plane. And I also thought it would also feel very nice to feel connected with this person who just picked me up instead of, like, I think old me would have been like, you picked me up, great, the plane was on time, we can now go to the house and do the thing we need to do and be there for people. And that no longer feels like what feels most comfortable. And I don't even think in the past that was a question, what feels most comfortable. It never would have occurred to me. And I said, would it be okay if we went for a walk around the block or a walk first? And it was neat to notice how it felt to ask for that because it felt like a very simple, clear ask. It felt like something I knew would help me feel better. And it felt like I'm happy to ask for this no matter what this person thinks. And maybe they'll see the value in it, maybe they won't, but either way, it doesn't really matter to me. I just know that I think it would feel good for me. So it was really a sweet moment for me, realizing sort of progress I've made and shifting old patterns. And we went for a lovely walk. before we went into this house. And when I sort of think of what it felt like to walk into this house and be there, like I know I did something that was good for me beforehand by asking for that walk. And that would have been something in the past that I probably would have been like, oh, should I ask for a walk? Should I not? Am I putting this person out? Like, do they just want to go there and be with the people? And like, is that too selfish? Like everybody else is going through something way harder and I'm concerned about how it feels to walk into a house. Like it would have been a lot of, I think, either in my head back and forth, or it would have been like an idea that popped up and then a very quick, let's brush it off the table. Like, no, that's fine. We don't need to go for a walk. Right. That's not that pressing. It's not that necessary.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was neat to notice a need that it wasn't absolutely necessary. It wouldn't have been a really dire experience had I not gone for this walk. However, it did make it more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It was a way of caring for myself before I offered care to others and presence to others.
And diffusing discomfort, right? Like that's an uncomfortable situation comprised of many drops of discomfort. And if you can diffuse some of that by walking around the block, then you're contributing less discomfort to an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, I like that, that you're bringing that up and diffusing some of it. Also, I see it as a capacity building, right? I feel like I had more capacity to be with my own discomfort and capacity to be with the discomfort of others, having had gone for that walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, something as simple as asking to go for a walk before the big thing you have to do.
That's really great. Yeah. That makes me think of when people ask to help with something. Mm-hmm. And it's easier to just do it ourselves, than to have to pause and think like, what can you help me with and what would be helpful right now? That's something I've been working on a lot. And people like to help. People like to be participants,
Yeah, that's a thing for me to work on too. Slowing down enough to delegate. I used to hate delegating. I used to think, this is more work for me. Why am I going to do it this way? But it really had a lot to do with my relationship with receiving and my relationship with being supported and what I thought about asking for help. So it's definitely a good one to work on.
I think if people really want to help, and in this example that you're giving in a situation where people are pretty helpless, like there's nothing that can be done about this huge discomfort that everybody's experiencing, to be able to give something so tangible and simple is actually probably a pretty big relief for everyone. Like they're going, oh, there's nothing I can do in this moment. And Georgiana wants to go for a walk around the block. I can absolutely give her that. That's probably a good feeling on a lot of subconscious levels.
Yeah, and I think, walking into this house, I didn't know what I could give that would make that much of a difference. But if I look back in hindsight, I think what I was able to give in one way because I took this walk, but also just because, I'm practicing using these tools just in daily life, is I brought into a situation that was, full of heavy and hard emotion, the most regulated self that I could bring.
Yeah.
Right. And, there were people who said, you bring a really calm energy that's really helpful in a situation like this. So don't underestimate the energy you bring into a room and what you might be able to do to support yourself in being able to bring a regulated energy to yourself, but also to bring it into a space, right? If you want to support people, I think that's a really lovely way to support people, to bring your regulated self and be able to offer co-regulation to people who are having a hard time.
Mm-hmm. I see you doing it out in the world and in our lives. I see you slow down and take a breath. I see you crunch your toes or whatever anchoring thing you're doing in so many moments when we're out in the world together. And it's a constant reminder for me to slow down and remember myself. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah. I know that like when I've worked with parents, families a lot of parents want to help their kids. They think sometimes helping means teaching. And we always joke that, teaching has a time. There's a time and a place for teaching. And sometimes a time and a place for regulation, offering regulation. And what did I want to say about this piece here? Oh, I'll ask parents. So when you responded that way, were you adding to the regulation in the room or taking away from it? Like, were you adding more? Were you adding more peaceful energy, or are you adding a more chaotic energy? And then they'll pause and be like, "Oh, geez." So I think anytime you are wondering how you can be helpful in a situation, that's a great question to ask yourself.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it doesn't mean we always have to bring this regulated self into everywhere we go, but it's more that if you're wanting to support and if you have capacity to support, that might be something good to be intentional about. What kind of energy do I want to bring into the space? Is the energy that I'm bringing something that's supportive to the space, or does it add more chaos and unrest to the space? And if it adds more chaos and unrest, it might just mean that you're not actually in a place to offer support in that way. And that's okay, because there'll be other people who have that capacity to bring that in. Mm-hmm. Let those people offer that kind of support. You might have a different kind of support you can bring. Or you might not be able to support anyone. And that's okay too.
That's okay too. Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi.
Yeah. I had one more story to tell.
Ah, good.
This one was a tough one in the moment. We were out, same trip. We were out having lunch and sitting at the table. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see the windows at the front of the restaurant, and I could see RCMP vehicles parked there, so police cars. And, if you've listened to this podcast, or if you know me, you know that, I've had my share of being around police in a way that felt really traumatic. And so I've been practicing for the last 3.5 years, to really stay rooted to myself when I'm around police cars, when I see police around, and for the most part have felt really resourced and able to be with the discomfort that stirs up for me sometimes. And so I noticed them out of the corner of my eye, didn't really think much, but noticed, and I probably subconsciously then felt the chopsticks in my hand. We were at a ramen place, felt my butt on the seat, and then just carried on eating lunch. Didn't really think much about it. It does register every time I see police. It does register. There's a moment. But really just carried on. And it wasn't until a bit later that someone walked into the restaurant and sat down at the table sort of right in front of us. And it wasn't until that moment that I realized, oh, there's actually policemen sitting at the table right in front of us. I hadn't noticed earlier. And I noticed because he was wearing, I think it's an emergency response team uniform. It was the green sort of army type uniform. And the second that I saw that, I just felt like something was happening in my body. And it reminded me of that day when I was surrounded by those police officers. And so I sat there with my lunch and just paused for a moment. And I was just sort of checking in with my body to see what's happening here. Am I going to get more and more dysregulated, or am I actually sort of okay feeling some of this? And I'm pretty okay in this moment without doing too much. And I could sort of feel it just getting bigger, this uncomfortable feeling. And there were 3 of them, but it was the one person I noticed first. And I looked at all 3 of them, then I saw a face, and it reminded me of the day when, all this terrible stuff happened. And walking past the police officers, and they would look at me with this like acknowledging look, knowing who I was and why I was there, and nodding their heads, but like really not saying much to each other. Like it was a weird situation. And so seeing this face of this officer, even though he was totally not the same person, brought that experience back of like, oh, like these are real people doing this job who I was around that day when they were all working really hard to help. And so I just looked over to who I was with and I said, I think I probably said, I don't know the exact words. I said, maybe I said, could you please hold my hand? Or I need you to hold my hand, or something like that. And I'm pretty sure they sensed what was happening, knowing me and my past experience. And like I let my hand be held and I could feel everything settling again. And I made sure to like look at those police officers and see the uniform and feel my hand in, being held, and feel the bench beneath my butt and notice my breath. And it slowly all just settled again. And I was able to carry on and have lunch. I think I felt the need to share a little bit about what happened that day, but it was a different kind of sharing. It wasn't like sucked into the past sharing. It was like, I'm sharing a little bit. I also feel my hand in yours. I like can see my soup in front of me. Like it was a very present moment awareness kind of sharing about that day, just enough to sort of process what was happening. And then, we just carried on with lunch. But it was really neat to experience that. It was almost in slow motion. I could watch myself and be like, what do I need in this moment? How am I doing in this moment? Is this something in my body I can hold on my own, or want to hold on my own, or want to practice allowing someone else to like be with it with me? And so I sort of see it as like a fun experiment. And so it was really neat. I don't think I've encountered that since, that day happened, where maybe I've needed that explicitly to ask for it. I think maybe I've been in other situations where, friends have been around, helicopters have been around, maybe, you've just reached for my hand, or people have just given me a knowing look, maybe touch. But this was like me very specifically running through choice points of like, do I need to ask for something right now? Do I want to just pretend like nothing's happening? Do I want to just get through this moment on my own and not say much about it? So like all of that was going through my mind, and it felt really good to make a conscious choice to say, no, in this moment, I really want to ask for something. I really want to ask for my hand to be held. And that was that. It was a neat experience.
That's great. Yeah, those are small asks that are really quite big. Not a lot to ask for, but a lot to be held with.
Yeah, and really significant if you happen to be someone like me who's like, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine was sort of my typical answer. I'm fine. I'll be okay.
Of course, we're fine. We're all fine till we're dead, right? And it might be nice to have your hand held while that's happening. Go for a little walk. And feel some connection, to not deny yourself.
Yeah, I think that's important. Not deny ourselves of support and comfort. Like comfort, really. Like I'm coming back to that again and again, because I don't think I prioritized comfort before. Like I didn't think of what would offer a little more comfort in this moment.
Well, yeah. Right? Whoever taught us that?
And we've been talking lately, I think, on the podcast and, in our programs of like, how can I personally add a little bit more comfort to this moment or to this discomfort? But right now, I feel like the theme of our conversation today is like, how can I ask for and extend to someone else so that I can experience a little bit more comfort in this moment? Yeah. Right? Am I willing to ask for that? And am I willing to allow other people to be a source of comfort for me? Even though they can't change the situation, they can't fix anything for us, they can't make the problem go away, but they might be open to and excited to help add a little bit of comfort to the moment.
Yeah. I think it can be really easy for us, especially the giver types among us, to offer comfort, to know a million things that might comfort somebody. And maybe that's a good opportunity when we're experiencing that discomfort, if we can catch it, or later on when we realize we didn't, to think about ourselves sort of in the third person. And if this was my friend who was going through this, what comfort might I want to offer them? And maybe I could ask for that for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Holding your hand would have been a no-brainer for me, but it might have been far away from my request bank for myself. You know?
Yeah, like holding your hand if you're going through something, putting a hand on you, right? Offering to go for a walk with you, like no brainers. But like until recently, probably not on my radar to ask for those things.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Practice makes more practice.
Practice makes for a better life, I feel like.
Yeah. Excuse me. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about this before we move into a closing practice?
I don't really think so. I mean, if anything, just explore, be curious about how you allow other people to offer you comfort. Are you willing to ask for it? Or are you still in the camp of, I'm fine, I'll be okay?
Fine,
right?
I'll
And
be okay.
maybe every time you notice you saying, I'm fine, I'll be okay, just pause with that. You don't even have to change anything. Just pause with that and just notice, oh, there I go again, giving that autopilot response. And
Right.
maybe you totally just want to keep giving that autopilot response, and that's okay. But maybe in that moment you realize, oh, this could be a choice point, and maybe I could practice doing something different and asking for something.
Mm-hmm. This is why the question, how could I be 1% more comfortable right now, was so valuable for me. Because if the question is, what do you need? The answer is nothing. I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if the question is, how could I be 1% more comfortable right now? That just changes the whole scope of everything.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is a great practice, actually, then, as a closing practice. We usually use this as an opening practice when we start groups. But just noticing how you feel right now and noticing what kind of adjustment would offer you 1% more comfort right now. It could be more than one, but just 1% more comfort. And like taking a moment to, you don't have to know it right away. You might want to pause. I think for me, 1% more comfort would just be like placing my hands back on that spot that we started off in. And then when you do that thing that gives you that 1% more comfort, you can check in and see, like, did it? Did it not? And then you could go again. You can get to go again and again. What could, bring me 1% more comfort now? And I'm like, oh, I think maybe leaning back on the chair. And if you have found an experience of comfort, you could practice being there for 1 breath or 3. Now
This is neat. I'm discovering that there's a sensation in my middle back that I can probably deal with on my own with like a roller bolster thing and some stretching. But it would be much easier to have help with it. Somebody to like pull on my arms or my legs and help me crack my back.
Neat. So do you think you'll ask for it today? Is there an opportunity for that?
If there is, I will. Yes.
Yeah. Right? And I think it's nice to say, if there is, I will. And if there isn't, I'm going to when.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I'll save that for a different episode, but it just has to do with how do we tend to our needs when we can't tend to the full need in the moment.
Yeah, putting a pin in that. Totally. Okay. Thank you, Gigi. Anything else you want to say?
I don't think so. I just want to say cheers to your comfort.
Yeah. Cheers to your comfort. Thanks. Okay, well, we'll see you guys then next week. Please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share it with somebody that you care about. We'll see you next time.
Bye.